We all.
One
Oh,
second.
yeah, sorry. All right. Let me know when we're live.
And we're starting with 4 minutes with opening statements, correct, from task force members?
That's right.
So Raleigh, it's going to go 4 minutes for opening statements, 4 minutes for witnesses, and then 5 minutes for task force members to ask questions.
Rounds. Okay.
Yep. Okay, Abby, we are ready to go when you are.
All right. Welcome, everybody. It is good to see task force members here. And we've got a bunch of attendees who are already in the room, as it were, watching and ready to testify. Welcome. My name is Abigail Smith, and I am chairing the Early Educator Equitable Compensation Task Force. And task force members are really looking forward today to hearing from interested stakeholders to inform our work. I'm just going to explain how the roundtable is going to work. Many of us have participated in or watched such events where the council members are on the dais, as it were. We are now, as task force members, on the Zoom dais, and so each task force member will have an opportunity to make an opening statement. We'll have 4 minutes to do that. Each have 4 minutes, and then we will turn to the witness list. We'll call up panels of witnesses. We'll probably call the round around between 8 and 10 per panel. And each witness will then have 4 minutes to testify. After everyone on that panel has finished testifying, then we will start with rounds of questions from task force members. And so each task force member will have up to 5 minutes to ask questions of the panelists who just testified, and then we'll go on to the next panel. So that's how it's going to work. We've got the timer that I think both panelists and task force members will be able to see, and we'll sort of move it along that way. So with that, I guess officially maybe start my 4-minute timer. Does that work, Raleigh? This is my first time in this chair. On the other side of the council here.
Well, welcome. We're happy to have you up on the dais. So once you begin, I'll click the start timer.
Perfect. Maybe a little less stressful to be on this side than sometimes. So what we're hoping to do today, this task force has been spending the last 6 weeks or so delving into some really important issues about the ways in which we can make real this commitment to increasing salary for early educators as part of the overall Birth to 3 effort that DC has been really pushing forward for the last number of years. And what I'm really looking forward to today is to hear from people who are doing this work day to day, certainly advocates, but also frontline educators who are working in classrooms with our infants and toddlers and pre-K age kids, and people who are running those programs at the administrative level, to really understand what is important to you in terms of how we think about some really important questions of how we set up a model that can get these dollars to where we want them to go, which is increased wages and pay for early educators, and to do it in a way that really strengthens our overall childcare system in ways that can allow us to both improve quality in terms of what we're delivering, to ensure that all workers get paid what we'll probably never pay them truly what they're worth, but get paid at the kinds of salaries that we know they should be getting, and to do all of that in ways that don't pass on costs to families, because that's obviously something that is of great concern to us. So I'm really looking forward to hearing the perspectives of those who are joining us. I know many of you have already submitted written testimony. If you have not, we welcome your testimony after you have a chance to testify today. And we will ensure that all task force members who aren't able to be here this morning will not only have access to the recording of this meeting, but also to the written testimony, so that we can all benefit from what you have to say. So thank you in advance for spending some time on your Saturday morning sharing your perspectives. And with that, I will turn to, I'm just looking on my screen here, Walrick for an opening statement.
Sure. So my name is Walrick Williams. I live in Ward 4, and I have two 4, almost 5-year-old and a 1-year-old that both attend the school nearby, or a childcare facility here nearby in DC. And so as a parent, I think compensation for the folks that help educate and care for my kids is incredibly important, and making sure that the compensation they receive is commensurate with the work and the dedication they put in is something that's very important to me. And so I think all of the points that Abigail made in her opening statement is sort of the perspective that I'm coming from as a member of the task force. So in the spirit of me being here to listen, I will make that the conclusion of my opening statement. I look forward to hearing the testimony today from everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Walrick. Sally.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sally D'Italia. I am the co-chair of the Program Funding and Compensation Committee and co-chair of the DC Directors Exchange. I live in Ward 2, and I've been an educator in DC for 30 years. And it was interesting. I have a quote of the day calendar on my desk, and today's quote says, "The most dangerous phrase is, 'We've always done it that way.'" And I believe that we are moving past that phrase with this task force and with this compensation scale. We cannot pay our early educators as we have always done in the past. We are seeing that that is very dangerous. We have the chance to make a change. We have a chance to make a bold statement of our value as early educators. And I really just appreciate everybody who's here today, who will be giving their input and their testimony. And for those who have taken the time to write in and send in testimony, and for everybody on this task force who are taking their time to make this change and move past what we've always done. So thank you.
Thanks, Sally. Christina.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Christina Encinas. I live and work in Ward 4 for 20 years. I have been in education, passionate about early childhood education. I'm really very happy that I was invited to be part of this coalition, because I think it's very important that we see education with the perspective of immigrants and all the people that need to be served with equity. A big part of education, early childhood education, is women of color, and I want to make sure that when we talk about empowering in the profession, that we do it with equity, and that everybody has the opportunity to have a life that they deserve and they work for. So I'm here to support that and to make sure that we all have access to the best possible compensation to provide the best possible education to our younger children in the city. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Christina. Rakaya.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rakaya Ambar Shaheen, and I live in Ward 5. I am the director of the Under 3 DC Coalition, and also the Early Childhood Program and Policy Director at DC Action. And I am just so grateful for everyone who is here today to share their perspectives, the things that they're most concerned about, the things that they want to elevate, and have the task force consider. I just want to step back and remind everyone that the reason we're here today is because early educators raised their voices and shared that the inequity had gone on for too long, and it was time to address the compensation, the undercompensation of early educators in the district. And so I know when folks were thinking about, are we being too ambitious? Are we asking for too much? The answer among early educators was no, this is something that we have needed for a long time. And it's finally time that we correct this inequity. So we're here because you raised your voices, and I don't think we can do this work well and properly if the perspectives of early educators are not integral to our recommendations that we provide to the council at the end of our work. So I'm so glad you're here today, because your perspectives are exactly what's needed to make sure that we do this well and fairly, and especially to make sure folks who sometimes get left out of our systems are heard and addressed. Their needs are addressed. So thank you so much for being here today. And I hope that you feel comfortable to share everything that you would like to make sure that we consider.
Thanks, Rakaya. Sarah.
Thanks, Abby. And I want to echo the thanks of my colleagues on the task force for all of the folks who are joining us today. It is so crucial that we have an opportunity as this task force to hear perspectives from a wide diversity of individuals and stakeholders who have perspectives on this crucially important issue. I'm Sarah Meade. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Early Learning with OSSI. I am representing OSSI on the task force. I am also a Ward 6 resident who's lived in the district for over 20 years. And been engaged in early childhood through grade 12 education at the national level for all of those 20 years, and in the district for about 15 of them across the 3 sectors of our wonderful early learning system. We know that early educators are the absolute core of our early education system. We cannot achieve any of the goals that we have as a society, as a district, for children and families without the valuable and incredible contributions of our early educators. We also know our early educators have done amazing work always, and particularly over the past 2 years as the district has gone through and is now working to recover from the impacts of the coronavirus pandemic. So I'm grateful that OSSI is included in the work that is this very important work of determining how we can increase the compensation of our early childhood workforce. OSSI has always agreed with and supported the goals of the Birth to 3 Act. However, we were not engaged when that act was written. And since it was passed, we have pointed out a number of areas where that creates challenges and tensions in the implementability of provisions of that act. For that reason, we are very, very grateful to be included in this task force, and that when the council chose to act to increase early childhood workforce compensation, it took a step back and said, let's really how to figure out how to get this right and engage this amazing task force that includes educators, it includes leaders from across our system. We are grateful as OSSI to be included, as well as people bringing expertise from economics and business that can help us do this work well. We know it's absolutely essential to listen to the stakeholders who are affected by this work. And so I'm so grateful that this task force was able to host this roundtable today, and that so many members of our diverse early learning community have agreed to share your perspectives in this time. And I also hope other people will share their perspectives through written and other formats as well. I know many of my colleagues are bringing those perspectives to our work as a task force. Thank you again, and I look forward to hearing the perspectives shared today.
Thank you, Sarah. Kathy.
Good morning, task force members, public witnesses, and attendees. I'm Kathy Hollowell-Mako. I'm the executive director at the District of Columbia Association for the Education of Young Children, DCAUIC. We are a professional ECE membership organization. I am also a Ward 7 resident, and I have been an early educator for the last 24 years. And I'm also a parent of 2 teenage children, but who at one time were very young and were in early education programs around this city. I'm very honored to sit on this task force and to be here this morning to hear from the witnesses, the early educators. As Rakaya said, your voices have been heard. This is an opportunity to continue to elevate your voice and tell us what is on your top of mind and what you need from us. And we know that early educators are a very vital part of the early learning community. The science is undeniable. We know what happens in birth to 3 matters, and we know that there are skills and knowledge and dispositions that deserve to be acknowledged and to be compensated in a way that is fair. And it should not matter where children learn, in what ward of this city, or where you teach. You deserve to have a salary where you can take care of yourself. And so we know that. We don't take this task lightly. I also want to thank you all for taking time out of your Saturday morning, which is certainly savored, for your own personal time to be here this morning. And I'm just really excited to hear from each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Marla.
Good morning, fellow task force members, community witnesses. We appreciate you taking your Saturday to speak to us, inform us, for us to learn from you and to hear your voices. I too am honored to be on this task force to help in the process of increasing and elevating the compensation for early childhood educators. I am not an early childhood educator. I was a high school teacher, a middle and high school principal, and then I also supported principals. And when I first became introduced to early childhood education, the level of respect and regard I have for early child educators is humbling, because it's just God's work. And it's just a tremendous act of love, not to mention the importance of the work that I have come to understand very deeply also, in terms of the trajectory that it places our children on for their entire K-12 career. So I am a member of Ward 7 Ed Council. I'm the chair. I am a resident of Ward 7. And so I just thank you for your time, your perspective, your voice, and we appreciate each and every one of you.
Thank you to all the task force members. We are now going to move to hear from our public witnesses. So again, for those just joining, we will do this by calling up a panel of folks, and then each witness will have 4 minutes to testify. After each member of the panel has testified, then we will do rounds of questions, 1 round of questions for each task force member. So each person will get 5 minutes to ask follow-up questions. So let me start calling folks up, and Christina, I think we'll do the magic of moving them where they need to go. I'm a follower on this. So Natasha Riddle Romero, Robert Gundling, Suzanne DeFelice, Carrie Thornhill, Alexandra Pelakov, Tamina Adams, I don't see. If she's here, then she's the next. Kelly Sloan, Bridget Hall, who I think I also don't see. Alan Gutman. All right, let's do Jacqueline Hines. That one here. All right, let's Desiree L. Is she here? I don't think so. Jamar Day. All right, let's stop there and gonna see where we are on numbers. Thank you for your patience. Okay. Okay, so let's start, and then for folks who were not here yet, we will just add them in as we go. So Natasha Riddle Romero, you are up first.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you. My name is Natasha Riddle Romero, and I am a community organizer with Under 3 DC. But today I will not be reading my own testimony. I will be reading the testimony of a teacher who wanted to share her perspective, but chose not to for fear of retaliation from her employer, and because she doesn't have a work permit to work in this country. Her story is very important and deserves to be considered because there are many teachers in similar situations. Hello, I am a lead teacher at a large bilingual early education program in DC. Thank you for your attention to this matter and work in trying to resolve the compensation issues early educators are having. I have been working at the center for about 11 years. In that time, I barely received a raise in the last 4 years. The raises that I have received have been no more than a couple of dollars. On top of that, my center does not contribute toward health insurance. If I opt into the employer-provided health insurance, I would have to pay a premium of about $480 a month, which is too expensive considering my current wages. That is why I use public health insurance. I am worried that if my salary is increased dramatically, I would lose my insurance. As members of the working group, you must find a way to increase the salaries of teachers in a way that won't affect their insurance, because there are many teachers who prefer public health insurance because it is free. He must also consider that not every early education program in the district operates in a fair way. I have adequate credentials and am bilingual, but my legal status keeps me from being paid what I should be paid, what I would be paid if I had a work permit. I have colleagues who have multiple degrees, speak English and at least 2 other languages, and have years of experience, but who make the minimum or close to the minimum. I pay for my classroom materials from my salary. I have been asking for a tablet to help me with my instruction for about 2 years, but I have not received one yet. I want everyone to know that teachers like me are not appreciated for what we contribute to our places of employment. For us, the issue of compensation is just one part of what affects us. We are also living in daily uncertainty for not knowing if our job is secure or if we will be removed from our positions for something as small as going to the bathroom. For those reasons, I recommend that this group devise a program of compensation that includes insurance, that includes people who work using their ITIN or tax ID number, and that will go directly to teachers so that we don't run the risk of that money not getting to teachers. Thank you and have a good morning. Thank you, everyone. So yes, that was the testimony of a teacher that couldn't be here. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Next is Robert Gundling.
Good morning, I'm Dr. Robert Gundling. I'm a senior consultant with Better Futures LLC and the past president of the GCAEYC Board of Directors. Thank you for the opportunity to testify at this roundtable to provide some responses to questions about how to begin to create an early childhood compensation strategy that includes a compensation schedule for early childhood educators in community-based programs. As an early childhood educator with over 40 years of experience in this field of practice, I believe the creation of an early childhood education compensation schedule is critically important to acknowledge the true value of a qualified workforce to ensure young children in the city have the foundation they need to reach their full potential in life. I suggest, if not already completed, that the task force members consult the report of the DC Commission on Early Childhood Teacher Compensation convened by the University of the District of Columbia and published by IASI in October 2012, and any records of the DC Department of Parks and Recreation regarding the Office of Educational Services staff who worked at early childhood education sites at recreation centers and housing authority facilities to inform your work. The staff at DPR were DC government employees and compensated as such. I had the honor of serving as one of the chiefs of this office. The staff compensation resulted in low staff turnover and the ability to sustain a high quality early childhood education program. My thoughts related to questions included in the announcement for this roundtable. Factors the task force should prioritize to develop the equitable compensation salary scale. Salaries equitable to what pre-K teachers in DC public schools and charter schools earn. I believe early childhood educators, regardless of the setting where they work, should receive the same salary and benefits. Use the living wage self-sufficiency standards in DC to develop the compensation scale and a level of education and professional development, making sure equitable resources and support are available to all the teachers who want to become competent early childhood educators. I believe all early childhood educators should qualify for the new ECE compensation salary scale. This is important because of the non-traditional programs that operate in the city, recognizing that often they employ part-time staff, as well as in early childhood centers. Floaters are employed to ensure meeting regulation when the regular staff are sick or on vacation. I believe either OSSI or through a competitive process, a contract would be selected to administer a program that provides dedicated funding to the early childhood programs, and that there also be either OSSI or a contractor who actually monitors the funds, and a public report, a report made available to the public providing evidence that programs use these funds to pay their teachers. Finally, in 18 seconds, I would say I really would recommend to the task force to consider the work and recommending to council it be done in phases rather than everything. It feels like I've been at the task force meetings at once, so as not to set the early childhood teachers up to believe something more than what's realistic will be coming. So, see, my time is almost up. Thanks for the opportunity to testify. I'd be glad to respond to any questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gundling, and appreciate folks adhering to the time limit. I know that always feels like some pressure. Suzanne DeFelice. And I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your last name.
Good morning. Apologies. I was interrupted just before it was my time. My name is Suzanne. I'm a parent living in the district. And I'm testifying today because my family and I believe that early educators deserve a compensation increase and guaranteed comprehensive benefits, including medical, dental, and vision insurance, paid leave, and retirement. I hope that the task force agrees and creates recommendations that both salary and benefits should be augmented, and that salary increases should be incorporated directly into wages, not paid through any separate mechanism. Due to the pandemic, my child is not yet in daycare, but we're looking into options for 2022. I know it will be difficult. Sorry, because, well, not because of this, but I know it will be difficult because many daycare centers have closed or scaled back during the pandemic, so spaces are limited and monthly costs may be higher than they were 2 years ago. I also know, as has already been mentioned this morning, that many of the women who provide essential childcare for families like ours are underpaid and live paycheck to paycheck. And as in a city as wealthy as DC, that's unconscionable. They also need to find high quality childcare opportunities for their own children on limited salaries. Increasing their compensation and guaranteeing benefits will not only help them raise their own families, but will also help them stay in DC. And again, as already mentioned, it'll help ensure retention rates. Further, it will hopefully encourage early educators who had to find other work when centers closed to return to the field. In DC, we pay a premium for high quality childcare, and the early educators who work with our children every day deserve fair compensation and guaranteed benefits. I again urge the task force to create recommendations that increase both compensation and full benefits for these essential workers. Thank you.
Thank you, and we appreciate the additional guests that you brought to the hearing. We're all about that. I believe that Carrie Thornhill is not here yet. I think that's right. So next is Alexandra Pelakov.
The nickname is also Zani. I'm going to use my nickname for today, but Alexandra is my full name. Good morning, task force members. My name is Zani Pelakov. I'm a kindergarten teacher at Milton Gottesman Jewish Day School, a parent of a beautiful 1.5-year-old, and a resident of Ward 5. I'm here as a member of Under 3 DC, a coalition committed to securing a strong start for every infant and toddler in DC. My testimony today will focus on the need to compensate our early childhood educators. Before I started teaching kindergarten in 2014, I taught 2s and 3s at the Jewish Community Center in DC. My passion is in early childhood centers, but I was struggling to afford living in DC and making a salary in the 20s. A salary my assistant teacher at an elementary school and many teachers are still making in 2021. So many of my friends as educators are leaving our profession since COVID because it's impossible to afford having a family and contributing to the social, emotional, and academic development of our world's future, our children. My own daughter was born 8 weeks into a pandemic when I had to go back to in-person teaching at just 12 weeks old. I didn't know what to do. My husband had been furloughed, we lost months of income, and the early childhood center we were on a wait list for didn't even open until January of 2021. Sadly, the only way we got through it was having a second job on top of my teaching job that let us afford having a nanny share in our home, a decision that was not easy because I truly believe my child should be in an early childhood center. Not all teachers have the time to have a second job, nor should they. On top of that, I was sacrificing my health and safety of my family by being at school each and every day in the midst of a world pandemic. We need a well thought out compensation system that will bring back our hardworking, compassionate, and dedicated educators into their classroom, back into our daycares, and back to the hearts for our children. We know that early childhood is the backbone of our education, and data shows the importance of strong foundational skills built in our child care days in order to succeed later in life. Our children's educators deserve to be compensated for the physical, exhausting, and beautiful work they do with our children each day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe Tamina is not here yet. Kelly Sloan.
Good morning, Compensation Task Force members. My name is Kelly Sloan, and I am a 12-year career early childhood educator at Educator DC, where I've taught infants through pre-K for the last 8 years. I find my career rewarding and fulfilling as I work with great colleagues, committed and involved parents, and best of all, wondrous children. However, some challenges outweigh these satisfactory feelings. The biggest challenges are living a comfortable life on my educator's salary and clearing a livable take-home wage after payroll deductions for health insurance. Throughout my entire teaching career, I have had to work a second job to provide bare necessities for my family. An increase in compensation with benefits such as health, dental, vision insurance, retirement, and paid time off must be a priority for this task force. As an infant toddler teacher with a Bachelor's of Arts in Early Childhood Education at Educator DC, which provides compensation on the higher end of the spectrum compared to other early childhood programs in DC, I am still facing significant financial distress. My payroll deductions for my health insurance family plan is $800 a month, which calculates to $9,600 per year. In addition, each doctor visits for a family member requires a $25 copay, and any unexpected trips to urgent care for the emergency room is a charge of $75. I've spent additional costs associated with frequent COVID-19 tests and exposure scares throughout this pandemic, coupled with added risk of working with unvaccinated young children. It is important for you to know that I'm not alone. There is an early childhood workforce shortage across DC because educators are not competitively compensated for the highly skilled work that we do. Currently, my classroom is fully staffed, but other classrooms in my program are not. We have had to combine classrooms on several occasions, or the assistant teacher or aide leaves the room to cover another classroom if there are absences or vacancies. Many educators leave the field for more competitive salary with benefits, despite their love and commitment to young children and families. This is why a stable, dedicated local compensation funding distributed equitably is essential for the stability of the childhood workforce in the District of Columbia. Childcare is vital to ensure that communities are thriving and families are able to go to work or pursue education and training. Children also need safe and stable educators who are not suffering from financial and emotional stress. As an early childhood educator, I struggle with providing a comfortable life for my family. A raise in compensation and additional employee sponsor benefits will allow me to save money for my children's education, their college education, enjoy family vacations, make home improvements, and overall have a better quality of life. We early childhood educators deserve to worry less and live more. A compensation increase will help me position my children and family for success. I encourage the task force to consider the following. All early childhood educators, including part-time educators, should benefit from the compensation increase. We should be paid on the same scale as DCPS teachers, considering educational levels. I know I'm going over my time. A compensation increase must include a pay raise and health benefits, medical, dental, vision, paid time off, and in retirement. Thank you for this opportunity to testify, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sloan. Next up is Alan Gutman.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my testimony this morning. My name is Alan Gutman. I've recently retired after 40 years in early childhood education, a career spanning starting as an assistant preschool teacher in New York to being a Head Start director in Los Angeles and in Washington, D.C., to most recently being the director of early childhood policy and initiatives at the Johns Hopkins School of Education. I currently am still doing consulting with Alan Gutman Consulting. I'm going to read from my recent LinkedIn post, and this is aspirational because I think we always address things piecemeal, and I think we still need to look at system. Compensation is a piece of a system. So I think it's time to align early childhood care and education policy, funding, and infrastructure with the cognitive, social, emotional, physical development, brain research, and finally guarantee the option of high quality birth to 5 years early care and education to all Americans. There is consensus amongst researchers and practitioners that the most critical and significant period of child development occurs in the first 5 years of life. And that is the most cost-effective and logical time to invest in our children and families, and I will add educators. Most developed countries have such socialized care and education for young children. We have socialized education for children 5 to 18 years old. It's called public schools. To paraphrase Elvis Costello, what's so funny about universal high quality birth to 5 care and education? And I will build on that to say that in terms of funding and ongoing funding, the research also through Heckman has shown us that when the children attend birth to 5 programs, it realizes savings. And guess where the savings get realized? In the public schools. So there needs to be some consideration in the funding formulas looking at, if we are keeping children from having to require high-cost special education services in public schools, where is the payback in the early childhood sector? The other piece, and again, I've just started to read through the compensation scale and what's proposed. I will say that generally these kinds of big changes don't happen by people being given these things. Often we have to ask for them, we have to take them. Early childhood has never been an organized union movement. If NAEYC was a union, we'd probably be one of the most powerful unions in the country. We are not. But if we were, we wouldn't be having a task force on early compensation. We would be having negotiations on compensation. And I would ask the task force to look at this more in terms of a negotiation and in terms of the larger implementation. If it's not seamless for educators, if it's not seamless for parents, it's going to create just more structure, more challenges for the people we're trying to benefit, the educators and the parents and the children. So I ask you to use this as an opportunity to look overall at the structure of how this gets implemented, and don't let the structure of implementation overwhelm making sure that people like Kelly and her family get what they deserve. Thank you for taking my testimony.
Thank you very much. Jacqueline and Desiree, I believe, are not here yet. Jamar Day.
Good morning. Greetings, Compensation Task Force members, council staff, fellow advocates. I am Jamar Day, community organizer for the Under 3 DC Coalition. For the last 18 months, I've been on the ground building awareness in community understanding the Birth to 3 Act. This means I have the pleasure to meet with over 28 elected officials, participate in 10 plus virtual town halls, listen to over 70 early education teachers, and attend over 54 coalition meetings, in addition to meetings with elected officials. I've met with 70 early childhood educators and have forged relationships with them and their family, listened to their stories and understand their needs on a deeper level, including the deep need for increasing early educator compensation. The conversations I've had with them revealed to me that raising ECE compensation is necessary for the sustainability of early learning educators. Today, I sit before you as one, but I bring the voices of many. Under 3 DC Coalition recently held community meetings where we invited educators in to have an off-the-record conversation about what their needs really are. The teachers who shared their stories expressed their dedication to early education and their frustrations with how such low wages for the specialized work they do. You've heard some of them testify today. In conversation with one teacher, they told me that they had to drive almost 2 hours to and from to work in Ward 7 because they live on the Eastern Shore. She stated that it's too expensive to live in the district with her family of 5 on the salary that she makes as an early educator. If we could pay educators like her better, they could afford to live in the city where they take care of the district children themselves. We must remember that early educators play an essential role in providing district children with consistency and continuity in their day-to-day lives during a time of great uncertainty. This bond of trust also gives parents a peace of mind and allows them to work and provide for their family. The council should definitely implement increased compensation that includes a fair pay scale, as well as benefits to retain the loving teachers that many of our district children have grown to know. In closing, you've heard from voices all over the district who have stressed that who have stressed that childcare is a priority. They've said that we must use this moment to address racial equity in early education. For far too long, Black and brown women who make up the majority of this workforce have struggled to get by and provide for their own families, and that must change. The message is clear. Teachers deserve an increase in compensation that provides them with the wages and benefits that enable them to live their best lives, have the comfort of PTO and sick days when they need them, as well as adequate training and professional development opportunities. So lastly, ladies and gentlemen, these are all the things that I've been hearing in the field, and I want to thank you for your time and consideration on today.
Thank you very much. And we have Sia Barbara Camara, who's going to read Carrie Thornhill's testimony. So Sia Barbara, you are up next.
Thank you. Good morning, members of the task force. President Carrie Thornhill of the DC Early Learning Collaborative is unable to be here. I'm reading her testimony. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for the DC Early Learning Collaborative. The collaborative applauds the work of the Compensation Task Force to date, and we view the task force as a strategically important element of our historic advocacy efforts to ensure a seamless continuum of high-quality programs and services that result in positive outcomes for all children and families in the District of Columbia. For us, the operative word is quality, which is a three-legged stool. While two of the legs fall outside the scope of the charge of the task force, they're worth mentioning. In addition to ensuring that we have a highly compensated workforce, we must round out that quality indicator by ensuring that we have a highly qualified and highly competent workforce. To that end, we offer the following considerations. We believe that in keeping with the charge of parity with an elementary school teacher, the compensation scale should represent the same salary parity scale that was presented by OSSI, including predictable step increases. Anything short of that diminishes the professionalization of the field and falls short of the salary parity charge to the task force. As for the minimum number of hours a week or per year an early educator must work to be eligible for the new compensation scale, that would be irrelevant in a system that is driven by role and credentials. In other words, if an individual is performing in a certain role and meets the credential requirements for that role, they should be paid according to what is stated in the salary scale. As for the mechanism of administering this supplementary salary compensation process, we strongly recommend that a highly qualified, experienced human resources company be contracted to perform these functions until such time as OSSI has the in-house capability. This process must take into consideration the capacity to provide initial advanced salary funds to programs to lessen the financial burden of increasing salary and benefits. On the question of oversight and accountability, we believe that OSSI should be required to initially provide quarterly progress reports to the council during the first 3 years of implementation, followed by annual submissions. As for the accountability function, we recommend that the council extend the life of this task force to carry out the following recommendations. Coordinate and oversee the mechanism for the short-term strategy and implementation. Coordinate and oversee the mechanism for its long-term strategy and implementation. Develop a salary compensation parity schedule for administrators. Additionally, we recommend that a task force be established for the purposes of recommending a uniform system of teacher evaluation and accountability as it relates to teacher compensation and promotion. We recommend that 16.5% should be allocated from the Salary Parity Fund to assist programs in meeting basic benefit requirements. Anything beyond that would be at the program operator's discretion. Thanks for the opportunity to provide guidance to the task force. It is critically important work, and we stand ready to further assist as desired.
Thank you, Dr. Camara, and appreciate you doing that on behalf of Carrie Thornhill. I believe that everyone in this panel has now presented testimony. Am I getting that right? Is there anyone I've missed? I think we're good. And so we're now going to start rounds of questions. Walrick, I'm going to suggest starting with you because I know that you only are able to be with us until 11. Is that right?
I've actually made different plans, so I'll stay on for an additional hour. I'll go all the way to 12. All
right, fantastic. See, all of you who just testified, we're so inspiring that that Walrick can't tear himself away.
That's actually what happened. So yes.
All right. So so then I will kick us off on question rounds. Again, we'll each have 5 minutes. So first of all, I want to just thank again all of you for your testimony. I particularly want to just honor the testimony that Ms. Pelakov and Ms. Sloan gave, and that that both Mr. Day and Ms. Romero shared from frontline educators. So that you all are the folks who day in and day out are doing this work. I also need to have a little shout out to Early Educator Fellowship, because I know that Ms. Sloan is a part of that group, and I'm so happy to see you here in that vein. And I want to take the opportunity from hearing from you all to note a couple of the things that I think the task force is really clear on its priority on, around making sure that infant and toddler teachers are paid at the same level. That is core to the work that we're doing. And I think it is incredibly important. And it is frankly groundbreaking. It shouldn't be groundbreaking, but it is nationally. So I just want to note that that is something that we are really, really clear about. And I appreciate hearing from you, Ms. Sloan, as someone who works with our youngest children, that is important. I want to follow up on a couple of things that people raised. One, I want to, Dr. Gundling, I want to say Dr. Gundling, can't remember if it's Dr. or Mr., but I'll give the doctor for now. You noted, and I think Dr. Camara said the same thing, an interest in thinking about this in phases, understanding that this is going to take some time. And I'd love any thoughts that you all have on how we think about the short-term versus long-term, understanding that some of the systems that need to be in place in order to do the kind of systems reform that you and Mr. Gutman talked about take some time. So I would love to hear thoughts on how we might think about what short-term versus long-term looks like. And any of you can take that.
So thank you, Abigail, for the question. So my thought has been the money available should guide the work in the phase. And I applaud, and my understanding, having been at task force meetings, is that it seems to me there's a focus at the moment on this first round being for bonuses rather than salaries. That makes sense to me. And so one phase, I actually couldn't give you what the additional phases would be, because it seems to me then one phase builds on another. And as I indicated in my testimony, in the 21 years that I've had the good fortune to work in DC as an early childhood educator, I've seen ambitious projects like this task force happen. Quite honestly, about 20 years ago, there was a project to create an early childhood system. And what sticks out in my mind, because I had the good fortune to be on that committee, was one of the first tasks of that contractor was to identify every source of funding that young children birth to 5 are eligible for, so that we actually knew what was the amount of money that would be available. And so I think that starting with the bonus plan makes sense to me, to be able to do more, which I think you're doing a great job with, and that is collect information and research so that the creation of this compensation scale is an early childhood compensation scale. I feel, while I understand, and I said that I think parity with DC public schools, quite honestly, I'll go to what, and then stop, what Alan had said. In the ideal, I think we need to stop being in the shadow of others. And we should be creating an equitable early childhood compensation scale that honors and respects those who are working with children birth to 5 and is aligned with the research and best practices.
Thank you. And I have run out my clock, but I know that others will have questions that will follow up on some of that. So I'm going to move to Walrick.
So I just have maybe a couple. So thank you all for the testimony that's been provided. I think there was maybe 2 points that I heard. So I'll start with the first. I think Kelly Sloan, I think it was in your testimony where you had outlined a couple things that the task force should consider, the recommendations should consider. Clearly a focus on both the compensation increase and so salary increase and benefits. On par with DCPS for the same level of work. And then I think you also said, I just want to make sure, were you saying that it's both for full-time and part-time providers as educators as well? Was that also part of, I just want to make sure I captured the right, that last one.
Yes, both full-time and part-time, because our part-time educators, they do come in and they are essential and needed because of the staff shortages that we have.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. And then I think it was Alan Gutman, in your testimony, I think you were mentioning sort of this concept of, and I want to make sure I got this right as well, like how are we thinking about it? And I don't know that it's in this immediate round, but at a bigger systemic level, how are we thinking about the, call it, total cost of educating our children in the district? And I think what you were putting forward was there's a cost avoidance that happens in the public school system that is not being contemplated, right? For like the way that you're avoiding cost later is via these early childhood education programs. And so what is is there a way to include that in the calculation that we're providing? Did I get that right? And can you elaborate a little bit more on what that might actually look like, or where you may have seen that, or how that could look like, what that could look in practice? I'm just curious.
Well, thank you for the question. And the calculation is this Heckman formula. And again, it's, you can't say that, oh, it's going to return exactly this,
right.
But in terms of what the research says, it's definitely, saving money down the K-12 pipeline, through, if not, society in terms of the prison pipeline and other health pipelines, so it's sort of trying to account for that. And I'm not going to pivot on your question, but I'm actually going to just take your question and build on what Robert was saying. And just in terms of an approach, I learned some of the best stuff from Head Start is not to always look at the money first. And it's really always to look at what's the prize at the end? What's your objective here? What's the overall goal? And we've heard several people say compensation is a big piece right now, but the overall goal at the end, I think, should be this, a system that, obviously has compensation in there. And I like the word that I forget who used the word comfort, that there's comfort, that they can live comfortably. We're always talking about adequate and things like that. But what I would say is that, and I'm losing my train of thought here. And I did lose my train of thought,
You started by saying you wanted to build upon what Robert had put forward. I don't know if that's helpful in getting you back.
Yeah, and also sort of looking at the objective, I think you have to have your eye on the funding piece, but I think if we take these, and I'm not going to call it piecemeal, but if we do these phases, it's sort of like you don't have an opportunity to build what the overall funding structure needs to be unless you look at the whole system together. So that if you look at the whole system together and your objectives and goals at the end of organizing that whole system together, then you can say, okay, there needs to be a funding formula similar to a public education funding formula to make sure that this doesn't just become one-time bonuses. Yes, quality initiatives have shown us that, yes, we can do this, with QRIS systems, but even those have modified because there hasn't been sustainability built in there. So I'm not going to speak anymore. I think I kind of, you get the idea of kind of understanding the whole system and then making sure that the funding structure will align, reflect, and sustain that. But to have the whole system in place, lest you get to phase one and find out, guess what? We've run out of money really to make this a sustainable system that changes all the other elements of quality and seamlessness for parents and making sure that the subsidies are adequate for them.
Understood. Thank you.
Thanks, Ulrich, and thanks, Alan. Sally.
Thank you. First, I just want to thank everybody for their testimony, and especially the educators. It's very brave of you to come forward and tell us your story. Walrick actually touched on a few things that I had some questions about, but I'd be interested in just getting a gut check from Kelly, since you have been very honest about this being your profession. You're very proud, and as you should be, of your qualifications. Sia Barbara mentioned from Carrie's testimony that we need to honor our early educators, and that it would be a slight to educators if we did not have a full scale with predictable steps, quality tied into that. What is your reaction to that? If that wasn't implemented in such a way?
Well, one thing that I can say when we talk about quality, I know with the program that I'm currently employed at Educator, we spend so much time and funding putting into quality facilities, quality educators, making sure that our teachers are getting the professional development that they need. And that requires more time and energy for us. That requires more time and energy for us to know our crafts, to be perfectionists in that field so we can get that quality. We are being slighted for not being compensated for that, because we're going above and beyond every day, because that is the requirement of the job. Someone mentioned that this is God's work, and it takes a lot from us. We always pour from our empty cups. So when we're not thinking about this compensation, it is a slight, absolutely, to us. So we do definitely have to consider it all the way around. Miss Kathy, talking with her, because she actually did, I'm in the fellowship, so she was a part of our one of our meetings, and she told me that it's a misnomer saying that what's best for teachers isn't always best for the kids and vice versa. But if we don't have teachers that are comfortable, that are happy about their work, then how are we going to pour into these kids every day and give so much of ourselves?
Thank you. I appreciate that. That was all I have at this time.
All right. Christina.
Thank you, everybody, for your testimony. This is very enlightening for me, and how we're thinking about this compensation. I have always said, as rude as it might sound, we need to feed the teachers so they don't eat the children. And I think that this compensation, work, it's that, how do we take care of the teachers so they can do the best for the children? And I think this is, you are at point with, what we need to do and what is asked of us, a lot of responsibility, because I see how this is, moving forward, it's going to bring a big precedent. Thank you for your testimony. I really appreciate it, and really helped me to just put even my heart more into this work. So thank you very much. I don't have any questions. I just really want to appreciate your testimony and your time.
Thanks. Rakaya.
Thanks so much, everyone, for your testimony. I especially want to thank the teachers who are here and parents sharing kind of the impact of this work on your family and your experience. I have a couple of specific questions that I wanted to ask a few of you. And I will start with Natasha, since you started us off today. You mentioned that the teacher whose testimony you were reading wanted pay to go directly to them. And that's an issue that we've been discussing on the task force. I'm curious if you can share the teachers or any other teachers that you work with, kind of what their perspective is on this approach and why they prefer it, if they do. And then I would also ask if you could share a little bit about, well, why don't we start with that? And then I have a couple of other questions.
Yeah, thanks, Rakaya. So I think that teachers understand that their programs are, sometimes overwhelmed with administrative duties. A lot of teachers, especially non-English speaking and limited English speaking teachers, work in programs whose directors or administrators are also limited English proficient. So there's added challenges to administering funds in a program like that. And there's also a lot of things that a lot of errors that could happen in the time that the money gets to the center or the program and then gets to the teacher. And there's also a lot of, the reality is that there are a lot of workplace concerns as well, labor-related concerns. And especially for folks who are already in a vulnerable situation because they are undocumented, that is even elevated even more. So I think that at least for Latin American immigrants, it is really important for them to get the money directly because there is a sense of mistrust between a lot of their employers and them, because they've been continually relegated to the margins, and they're in a very precarious situation in many different ways, not just because they're not getting paid enough, but also because in any moment they could be kicked out of the country for very arbitrary reasons, to be completely frank. And so that's a consideration for them, and that's something that they want to make sure that they get their money. They also want to make sure that their programs aren't being overwhelmed, because in a lot of cases, it's also that they have very close relationships to their employers, and they know very well what they have to go through, the hoops they have to jump through to get that money or whatever to the teachers. So I think that's just one of the reasons, or a couple of the reasons.
Thanks, Natasha. And I want to open that question up to other teachers. Some of you mentioned this and some of you didn't. So I'm just curious, do some of those, does that reasoning resonate with you? Do you not feel strongly about this at all? But I'm just curious, do you have a perspective on whether you think the funds should come directly to you or to your employer than to you through your pay? Feel free not to respond if you don't have a response.
I feel as though that the funds should, they should come directly to us, but I feel like if that were to happen, we need to make sure that everyone who is qualified to get those funds, they know what to do, because I figure that might be the biggest issue. How will they come directly to them? How will teachers know that, okay, or educators or anyone in the field know, like, hey, this money is for you, go get it. Sometimes there are a lot of obstacles when it comes with that. And I figured the convenience of having it go through the employer is just makes it easier for a lot of educators. But I think that just depends on, for me, I know that, my educator will make sure, my employer will make sure that I get my funds, but that, like you said, there is a bit, like Miss Romero said, there is a big mistrust with certain situations. So maybe it's better for it to just be clear on how educators can directly get those funds.
Thank you, Ms. Sloan. And I have a long list of questions, but I'm out of time, so I will pass it back to you, Abby.
We all feel now some sympathy for council members when they're frustrated by this, right? Sarah.
Thanks, Abby. And I'll echo the comments all my colleagues have already made about the gratitude we have, and particularly appreciation for the educators on the panel who shared your experiences and perspectives. I have a question for Dr. Gundling. I want to make sure I'm correctly understanding what you were saying in referring to looking at the records from the DPR employees who were government employees. Are you suggesting that the task force should recommend, or that the district should work to try to create a situation where more childcare staff are direct district government employees?
So thanks, Sarah. So no, but only that it would seem to me that's a more realistic comparison, thinking about parity than with DC public schools. It was people doing the same work of the early childhood community. I'm not suggesting that we all become an extension of DC public schools, but I was using it to illustrate the point that the staff had all the benefits of DC government employees. They were on the same salary scale. So I had assistant teachers making $40,000 and $50,000 with full benefits. And to make the point that I had almost no turnover and the ability for sustainability. We had what was considered by some one of the highest quality early childhood program, system in the city.
Thanks for clarifying that, Dr. Gundling. I appreciate it. Dr. Kamara, this may not be a fair question to ask you since you're speaking on behalf of Carrie, so just tell me if it's not, but I wanted to ask if you can share any more about the idea of engaging a human resources organization. That is a really interesting idea. What I'm curious is whether you think in that context, it would be appropriate or necessary to require early childhood education programs in the district to participate in that human resources organization in order to access these additional workforce funds, or if you're suggesting that should be one option for facilities.
Well, I'm not thinking so much about that people would be required or not required, but I think in order to be able to ensure that there is the consistent distribution of the funds, the fact that you will probably need to look at the payrolls of programs over the last 3 years to have a sense of what it is that people have, where people have been compensated. I think that is going to take a significant amount of time. And right now, I don't know that the capacity to do that exists with OSSI or some other aspect of the government. So we're looking at this from a systemic perspective as a way to be sure that people don't do something different in the next few months with salaries going down, but that you really have a way of knowing that once the system is in place, that you have a sense of what's happening in the programs already, and then the other aspects of the system can be worked out. And human resource, DC government has a major human resources arm. They do distribute to all of the employees. So it would be not unlike that. But right now, I don't know that the capacity exists at OSSI to do it. But so that's
So just to make sure I'm understanding, are you suggesting engaging the human resources organization to do sort of like the auditing and forensic work of understanding what people are paying now? Or are you actually suggesting engaging a human resources organization to play the function of paying child development facility staff rather than their current employers?
Rather than the current employer. I think, well, ultimately, I think money needs to go to the employer because, and that entity would probably need to do it because all of the salary, the organization will be paying a part of the salary. And the money that's coming from this fund is in addition to what the provider, the operator would be providing. And so I think that would make it simpler. If one, they did all of the forensics and then they could do the distribution and monitor what's going on, because this is a significant opportunity that everyone has said. We cannot afford to have errors, and we can't afford to have scandals. Because we may never get this opportunity again if we don't do it with fidelity. And Carrie probably would say some other things, but that's just.
My time is up. Thank you both so much.
Kathy.
Most of my questions have been addressed, but I just want to also just say again, thank you to the early educators that have testified today. And I really enjoyed hearing your perspectives, and hopefully we can work this out to where we're able to do right by you. Thank you.
Marla.
I too want to say thank you to everyone who's testified thus far. It has been informative. This is complex, important work. I have the question of, so let me say this first. In all the deliberations that I participated in this task force, it's been clear that there's a commitment to both salary and benefits, not an or, but an and. We also recognize that our window of time is short, as this task force will end in January. So we've been trying to figure out how to first do no harm to anyone in terms of medical benefits, benefits cliffs, those types of issues. We've been trying to think about what's the short-term strategy versus the long-term strategy in terms of requiring a minimal salary first and or a salary scale. As we think through the very real tensions and the short time window we have to set the foundation for this work, what do you want us to be absolutely clear and certain of as we weigh these various tensions to meet the needs of early childhood educators? So that's what I just want. I want to really hear that from you.
Well, never one to pass up an opportunity, Marla. So I think the question you ask is really thought-provoking. And from my work, the response is challenging because the work is complex. How do you focus when, to me, a reality is we do not have a full-fledged operating high-quality system? And so my experience is what the result of that is, and I appreciate the work, believe me, it's much easier to be on the side of observing all of you as you deliberate in your task force meetings. And that is because whatever what I understand from my experience, because it's not a system, whatever you change is going to have an impact, positive and negative, on other parts of this silo. So for example, let's give funding for healthcare. Yes, but, and you've already, which I acknowledge and appreciate on the task force, but we can't do that because some people are going to lose it. And it would be so complex to find out how to do it the right way. So I think I'll end simply saying on my folks, I think you're on the right track with coming up with a bonus structure for this first initial amount of money that's been allocated. I would hope the money, similar to the scholarship program that was established under the pre-K legislation, would be non-lapsing, so that if money isn't used, it stays for this purpose. And what I would think, I don't know if the government can do it, but maybe we could be investing it so it starts generating additional revenue in order to keep moving forward. So the short answer to your question, my suggestion would be I'd stay focused on the bonuses for this initial phase.
Oh, Kelly.
I'm sorry. I know you had your hand up. I'll be quick. I agree with Mr. Gundling, but I feel as though that we need to think about what the issue is in early childhood education as far as the educators today. We need more teachers and we need to keep teachers. And I think that the bonus system that's what that's going to do. But as far as the benefits and looking at how we can grow long-term, I bring that up because that's something that still has to be addressed. I've been in the field, I know I'm going over time. I've been in the field for almost over 10 years. And, early childhood is very physically demanding. So, I'm looking at things, I need more healthcare. I need more benefits now over time. So I think just to keep that tenure, that's something that we definitely need to look at in the future.
Thanks, Ms. Sloan. Mr. Gutman, I'm going to give you 30 seconds and before we close out this panel.
Yeah, so just kind of focused on looking at a salary scale in front of me. That reads that unless there's uniform implementation of that, it's what's the use of that? It reads right now to me like a salary study. And I think when people start talking about direct payment probably can only work in a bonus type of a situation in terms of how it gets paid to teachers directly. Otherwise, if you're really talking about some kind of centralized implementation of a true salary schedule that has to be uniform, there's going to have to be some centralized monitoring, structuring of that. And then just a cautionary, and it's not in response to any question, but the cautionary on this too is that we also don't want to create out of this because of, someone had mentioned about undocumented people like that we still don't create the opportunity for having two tiers of care, this kind of under the radar care and this now other care that's highly monitored. So I'll stop.
Thank you. So again, I want to thank every member of this panel for your testimony. Most of your testimony, I think we have in writing. If you have not submitted written testimony, we'd appreciate it if you would do that to the same email account that you signed up, so that we can ensure that all task force members who weren't here have access to that as well. And those of us who are here can refer back to it. And I just want to sort of take chair prerogative to just take one minute to just acknowledge there are people in this Zoom room who have been doing this work for for decades and decades in DC. And I want you all to know that we fully understand that we are standing on your shoulders in doing this. Robert, you mentioned a commission that actually Sally sat on, 10 years ago or something, looking at compensation. And that's just one example of the kind of work that we are building on. We're trying to bring that all to bear in this, but really want to appreciate you. And again, a special thank you to our frontline educators who were able to share with us. So you folks who were on the panel are now welcome to go back into the attendees room where I think Christina will move you back to continue to watch if you are interested and able. And I'm going to call up the next panel. I also want to say for people who are attending right now who had not signed up to testify, if you are interested in testifying today, please go ahead and raise hands, and we'll add you as we can to the panel. So you can raise your hand in the attendee room. So now I'm going to call up. So I think Bridget Hall is now here. So Bridget, we're going to move you in. I still don't see Tamina.
Abby, would it be possible for the task force members to take a very brief break while the people are being transitioned over?
Absolutely, that's a great
what
idea.
I was coming out to say.
Thank you for coming on that. So we will take a short break while we transition this panel. We'll take just like a 5-minute break. Is that okay with folks? Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back with a new group. Okay, so we've got, make sure I'm not missing people here. I believe Jacqueline Hines and Desiree L are still not here.
Jacqueline, if I could just interject, Jacqueline Hines will not be here today.
Okay.
She's having internet issues.
Got it. Thank you, Kathy. Hopefully we'll have her written testimony. Kashef Mahmood. I don't know if you're here. Erica Dozier. Rosa Paco. Cassandra Nelson, I see. Raul Echeverria. Alice Burt. Rachel Watson. Patricia Brown. Let me see how many I'm up to here. All right, I think we're good. Jeffrey Tisdale. Destiny Sharp. All right, and I believe the other people on our list are not here. Kalila Gaddy, Dominique Spencer, Alethea Etnoff, and Angelique Spate, I do not see. So Christina, I think just Alice Burt is the only one who's currently in the attendee room who needs to be moved over.
Hey, Abby, I'm trying to move her over. I've tried a few times. I'm not sure if she's able to accept it.
Same. I've tried on both computers and we're having trouble moving her over right now.
Does she manually have to accept in order to move it over?
Sometime.
So Alice Burt, I don't know if you can hear us. So I have a thing that says allowed to talk. Can we hear her if we click that?
Yeah.
All right, let's see.
So when it's her turn, if we're having that issue, then she can talk when it's her turn. So we can do it.
Alice, if you can hear us, Alice, I don't know if you stepped away from your computer, but if you can hear us, and unmute yourself and let us know you're there?
Yes,
oh,
I'm
excellent.
here.
Hello, perfect. Okay. So I don't know if you see a little invitation on your screen to saying that that you're being promoted to a panelist.
No.
Okay, so for some reason we're having trouble moving you into, oh no, you're there.
You get her?
I see her now. But you're in both places, which is strange. All right, Alice, I think one way or another, we will figure out how to, when it's your turn, how to hear you, at least, even if we're not seeing you on the screen, so.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
And I thought I saw Katrina McCrae's hand go up. Well, since we're on a break real quick, I don't know if Katrina.
Katrina, hey Katrina, and hey Donovan, more of my fellows here, gotta give you a shout out. Katrina, were you raising your hand to say that you wanted to testify? I've
allowed Katrina to talk.
If I possibly could.
Yeah, I think that would be fine. And how many do we have right now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, yep, that works.
Okay. So I'm seeing, all right, so I will move her to panelist.
Great.
All right. Yeah, so since we've allowed Alice to talk, even though she's not moving over, when you call her name again, Abigail, she should be able to unmute as long as we leave the permission and speak.
Great, perfect. All right, and I think that is everybody who is in there. Okay, and I know I said 5 minutes, but now I need to take literally 30 seconds. I'll be right back. All right, folks, we are gonna start back up. And get my list here. Okay, so first up is going to be Bridget Hall. And again, for those panelists who weren't here for our initial directions, each of you will have 4 minutes for your testimony, and you'll see that timer counting down. Yeah, I see Bridget. Okay, great. So Bridget, it's all you.
Good morning. I thank you for this opportunity. It's so some of the questions that just made me, I had a lot of thought or ideas about it. As far as prioritizing what would need to be addressed first. And I really feel that information or education to the employees was probably a good idea, because I'm sure priorities look different with different people. Though I do feel that benefits should be definitely a priority but that's my opinion. Whereas other people's needs may be in another area or another emphasis. The idea of how to disperse, I feel it needs to be taken into great consideration because I feel respect should come first. And our employees or the childcare field or workers have been disrespected for so long as far as compensation is concerned, that the way that they receive these funds or the way that they receive their compensation should be done in a very respectful way, because they are the ones that do the work. So I don't know what that may look like, but I just do feel that it should be done respectfully. And I just think this is very much long overdue. And I guess that's, I do commend also, I want to commend all of the educators, the teachers that testified. I do feel that was very brave, and I applaud you for standing up for yourselves. That's about it. I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. And when people do testify, if you are able to turn on your cameras, we would really appreciate seeing your faces. All right, next up is Cassandra Nelson. Ms. Nelson, if you are speaking, we cannot hear you, so you're on mute.
Hello?
Hi, there. Now we can hear you.
Okay. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Cassandra Nelson, and I have been in the early education community for over 30 years. I currently operate 3 locations in the District of Columbia, and I have previously operated in Prince George's and Charles County. I am also a member of DCELC, and also on the advisory board of LIFT, the Low Income Investment Fund. I want to offer my testimony based on the areas of interest that you all included in the Zoom invite. So my testimony would be geared around those questions. I want to thank the members of the task force. Thank you for your hard work and dedication. And thank you for recognizing the well-being of early childhood educators is paramount to ensuring a level of programming that results in high quality child development and education services and positive outcomes for all children and families in the District of Columbia. With gratitude, I would like to contribute to this effort by offering my suggestions and comments on delivering equitable compensation to early childhood educators. The factors that should be prioritized with regard to developing an early childhood educators' equitable compensation salary scale are as follows. Compensation for early childhood educators should at a minimum be on par with the scale utilized by DCPS for its elementary schools. I emphasize DCPS as opposed to using a nationwide scale or a nationwide average. However, I would like to add, I heard someone earlier, I think it was Robert, mention about maybe a federal scale, and that would be even better. Also, benefits should also mirror the benefit package enjoyed by early childhood educators employed by DCPS. Presumably, the DCPS scale considers factors such as education experience, and performance. For these are important to developing a system of equity and fairness. Access to the funds should not be judged by hours. Equal work should receive equal pay. However, there should be a different pay scale for substitute versus a regular teacher, as the responsibilities are different. The funds should be accessible to all early education programs in the District of Columbia. However, access should be prioritized by size/capacity and location, as studies have shown that smaller early childhood programs and early childhood programs located in disenfranchised communities have less operational resources than larger programs in more affluent communities. Therefore, the disadvantaged programs should have top priority to receiving funds, assuming that funds are going to be limited. First step is to make the pay scale public and accessible to all early childhood providers and early education and early childhood educators. Early childhood providers submit a monthly payroll supplemental claim that includes, excuse me, that includes a roster of staff being paid. The claim should include staff name, current pay, the pay being claimed from the pay equity scale, and the justification for supplemental pay, i.e. educational background, years of experience, performance score. The amount claimed should be the difference between current pay and the pay equity scale plus 16.5% for statutory deductions. The payment should be made by ACH to the bank of the early childhood provider prior to the month so that the equity payment may be included in the early childhood educator's next pay.
Ms. Nelson, I'm going to ask you to wrap up your testimony because you're over time. If you could just kind of wrap up for us, that would be great.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
I didn't see the time. The factors that should be considered with regards to oversight and accountability, ECE providers must agree to penalties of perjury. EC providers must certify that all monies received from the fund will be paid to staff as claimed on the payroll supplemental claim, and EC must certify the current pay claim will never be less than the average pay for the same position in the last 3 quarters prior to assessing the funds. Okay, I will wrap it up there.
Thank you. And I see that you submitted your testimony, Ms. Nelson, so we have it in writing as well.
Yes, you do.
So I appreciate that.
Okay.
Raul Echeverria.
Hello, everybody. My name is Raul Echeverria, and I am co-founder, president, and CEO of Communicates Preschool. Communicates has 5 centers in the District of Columbia, and we currently partner with the DC government through OSSI to provide free universal preschool to 3- and 4-year-old residents of the district. As part of the Pre-K Enhancement and Expansion Program, also known as PKEEP, our centers currently serve students from 18 months to 5 years of age. At Communicates, our goal is basically to create a global mindset in our students. Our highly skilled staff members put in practice an approach that allows children to develop new language skills while getting ready for their K-12 educations. And we are proud to say that our students leave Communicates ready for school and also speaking a second language. And these outcomes do not happen by chance. They happen because of the special skills and hard work of our teachers, administrators, and paraprofessionals who bring to the table all the hard work that they're doing and their skills to make sure that we meet these goals. And certainly the skills that our team members bring are at least on par with those of any educator in the K-12 realm. Indeed, we understand that bringing parity between our early childhood educators and our team members at Communicates and throughout the district and K-12 is indeed a matter of social justice. For too long, early childhood educators and providers have been essentially subsidizing the industry by working for low wages and providing services essentially at charging amounts that don't meet costs. So we are absolutely thrilled that the DC government is seeking to make things right by promoting a compensation parity for early childhood educators. Now, we feel that it is imperative that the mechanism employed to disperse these funds allow for quick distribution and proper oversight and accountability. We are lucky to live in and operate in the District of Columbia, which has the PKEEP program, a program that already provides pay equity to educators who teach in participating centers. We at Communicants believe that the DC government should leverage the technical know-how and tools available at the Office of the State Superintendent of Education through its Enterprise Grants Management System to deploy these grants in a manner that is similar to the PKEEP program. At Communicants, we have seen firsthand how the implementation of the PKEEP program has improved the lives of so many of our staff members. We also have experienced the boost in work performance that comes with being seen as professional educators and not mere babysitters. We're also proud to be able to provide our team with quite possibly the highest salaries in the early childhood industry. I know that it has led to a higher level of service to our families and our students. And we're excited to see this pay parity extend to all early childhood educators in the district. This initiative has the potential to take our educational system to the next level. And we would like to know, but we want to make sure that we can leverage the systems and operations that already exist and the technical know-how in the system to make sure that the funds reach our educators with proper oversight and accountability. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. We are already in one of the most innovative jurisdictions in the country, and there's a lot of technical know-how that is built in already that can be used to make sure that we get these monies to our educators, and with the appropriate oversight and the appropriate mechanisms to make sure that they're done in the most effective possible way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Echevarria. Alice Burt. Ms. Burt.
Okay, I'm here. Okay.
All right, perfect. We got you.
All right. Okay. Good morning, Conversation Task Force members. My name is Alice Burt, and I am a teacher here in the District of Columbia at Voices of Little Angels Development Home. I am currently working with Under 3 DC and Coalition committed to securing a strong start for every infant and toddler in DC. I am very passionate about the work I do. I also received a Bachelor's of Arts in Early Childhood Education. I also use my talent at church where I work with the youth as well. I enjoy when children are learning. I get joy knowing that I am made a difference in a child's life. My testimony today will focus on why increased educators' compensation is vital to secure our city future for years to come. I have been an early educator over 24 years and am passionate about the work. Excuse me. Okay, I work with the youth as well. As an ECE educator, I cannot fully do my job if I don't have all my needs met. If I wanted to take a sick day or time off for a doctor's appointment, it would be impossible to do without losing pay for my family. Any compensation increase must include a pay raise along with health, benefit, medical, dental, and vision, paid leave, and retirement. I also have to think about my own future when when I do finally retire and want to know that hard work was not in vain. I am urging the counselor to make the necessary recommendation to help ECE workers to get the pay they deserve. Thank you for your time. Again, I am Alice Burt, teacher at Voices of Little Angels Development Home. It is time for a change. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burt. Rachel Watson. Ms. Watson, if you are speaking, we cannot hear you. You are on mute. Rachel Watson. All right, we are going to come back to you. Patricia Brown.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Patricia Brown, President and CEO of the National Children's Center. It is truly a pleasure and exciting opportunity to participate in this discussion, as it is something that is near and dear to my heart. The National Children's Center has an early learning and early intervention center located in Ward 8. It has been a part of the fabric of the community for close to 30 years now. And we deliver services to close to 200 children each and every day. 30% or more of our children are medically fragile or have disabilities. And we have long argued, advocated for financial sustainability support, not only for our program, but for the teachers that do the outstanding work that happens at our center each and every day. I can truly say that I have a very dedicated and committed group of employees who, in spite of the fact that they struggle from day to day to sometimes make ends meet personally, they come into the center and they do amazing work with our children. And so we have heard throughout the testimony today why it's important to raise compensation, the importance of our educators. So I'm just going to say, I think this is an important, I'm going to say second step, because as a center, we struggled financially to be able to maintain our program because of the cost of maintaining a facility and all of those things. And so I am happy that in recent years, OSSI has started to look at the true cost of care in running a program. But now we must look at the educators that do that work, because without them, we have no program. So I am proud that we are high quality. I am proud that throughout the pandemic, we have continued to provide services. Prior to the pandemic, we supported over 200 children. Currently, we are right around 150. We are licensed for 8 weeks to 12 years of age. And I've submitted my written testimony, but in the interest of time, I'm going to go to Marla Dean's question, what's most important to me? So I think compensation with predictable scales based upon credentials is long overdue. I also believe that it should be administered through the employer and not directly to the employee. And I say that as a center who currently has 4 different platforms that we are engaged in. We have 2 early Head Start classrooms, we have Quinn classrooms, we have P-Keep classrooms, and we have independent classrooms. And some of those programs pay us directly to pay the employee. Some of them pay the employee directly, but when the employee doesn't get paid, they come to us asking questions, and we can't manage what someone else is controlling. So I would strongly recommend that we have the opportunity to manage the funds with oversight and accountability. Raul mentioned earlier the P-Keep program. I think it works very, very well. We are required to pay at a certain scale. We are required to show proof that we are paying that, and we are held accountable. And I think that that system is already built. Why reinvent the wheel? Let's do that for our infant and toddler teachers as well. The cost of benefits is a critical piece, because as we look at what we learned from the pandemic, and we looked at the many inequities in healthcare and access to quality healthcare and education, we are a center that provides health benefits and retirement and vision and dental. But I will say that some of our employees make the very dangerous decision not to participate in the benefit plan because they can't afford to. And so I think that we need to start taking that into consideration and be sure that those additional funds are a part of the overall structure. I think a bonus structure initially is appropriate if that is a way to expedite getting the funds to the centers, because we are struggling to find quality staff during this period that is called the Great Resignation. We have had to do many things as a center that we've never done before, like looking for sign-on bonuses and paying recruiters. And
Brown, I'm going to ask you to wrap up.
Okay. So what's important is compensation with scales. What's important is to make sure that benefits are considered. It's important to give it directly to the employer and hold the employer accountable. I think the task force needs to go beyond January, because you can't do all of this work in this short period of time and do it with excellence. So this is a first step, because we got to think about administrators on the next round. But thank you so much for the opportunity. And I appreciate all the work of the task force today.
Thank you, Ms. Brown, and thank you for submitting your written testimony as well, so we'll be able to look at that in more detail. Jeffrey Tisdale.
Hey, good morning. How you guys doing? Good morning, good afternoon, Conversation Task Force members. My name is Jeffrey Tisdale, and I'm currently a pre-K assistant at Educator. I have been an early childhood educator for 4 years, and I have found my experience working with young children to be quite rewarding, in large part because I've been able to build a great rapport with my colleagues, students, and families. Although I enjoy my job immensely and see the positive impact on my students, I contemplate leaving the profession due to my inability to make ends meet on current salary. For example, my paycheck is not enough to cover my rent. I have to work an additional job to supplement my income, stretching my average workday into a 15-hour workday. Furthermore, having to factor in other costs into my budget, such as the expense of gas, has made it impossible to live in DC and has even caused me a delay to having my own family. I encourage that the ECE Equitable Task Force to consider the following. In addition to official credentials, consider years of experience when determining the rate of compensation increase, to raise early educators' compensations to include a salary increase with the benefits such as health, dental, and vision insurance, retirement, and paid time off. An increase in compensation would mean more money in pocket and a better quality of life. For instance, I wouldn't need an extra job to supplement my income. In addition to a salary increase, greater employer-sponsored benefits would allow me for more affordable co-pays at the doctor during an unplanned doctor's visit or medical emergency. This in turn will prevent financial setbacks, like when I had a $250 copay for unexpected surgery in January. An increase in compensation will mean more for myself and all other early educators. The pandemic has taken a physical and a mental and a financial toll on everyone, especially in early education. We are the essential staff that work through the ups and downs of the past year and have to enable parents to work while providing children a safe place to grow and learn and also thrive. Despite significant financial worries and program understaffing, my colleagues and I make adjustments and fill in when we're needed. However, with non-competitive salaries, heavier workload, and increase in early childhood education workforce shortages, compensation must be raised to make staying in the field a financially sustainable career choice. Each year, Many early childhood educators leave this field, and many may consider if we could earn a salary that allows all of life necessities along with a few luxuries to raise our spirits. This is why increasing compensation that includes raises in salary and benefits is vital to attract and retain early educators in the field.
Thank you, Mr. Tisdale. Destiny Sharp.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Destiny Sharp. I'm a DC native, Ward 4 resident for life, 1997. I am the economic justice organizer with Spaces in Action, and I lead the early learning and childcare work that we focus on locally and nationally. Through grassroots organizing and early childhood education policy, I've been able to establish the Spaces in Action Early Learning Committee, a base of early learning educators, custodial grandparents, parents with children birth to 3, center directors, home visitors, and pretty much anyone who cares about strengthening the child care system. In my role, I've had the esteemed pleasure to be a community organizer in the Under 3 DC Coalition, representing my organization, securing funding for the Birth of 3 law in the FY20 year, FY21, and now 2022. I joined the Birth of 3 Coalition at a time when I graduated college and COVID-19 exacerbated all of the challenges that childcare has always had, and I'm honored to do this work every day. I'm also the DC Action Shooting Star of DC 2021. I come to the ECE Compensation Task Force humbly, and I am honored to speak on behalf of leaders of the Spaces in Action Early Learning Committee. I will speak from the perspective of 2 administrators, a teacher, and wrap up with my overarching point. I've spoken with many leaders on the Spaces in Action Early Learning Committee and the broader early care community. To be frank, I've heard a mix of things. Here goes. An administrator from a center program believes that we should consider approaches to increasing compensation, not channeled through employers, to reduce burden on program administrators and ensure that payments are appropriately processed. Meaning pretty much it should be optional whether administrators pay directly their employees or whether a third party wants to be able to pay them for direct payment. So it should be optional. As far as LEP, NEP credentialing waivers, it is a must. It has to be included in the package. Technical assistance needs to be stronger. When we think of all these other stores like Macy's, Old Navy, when you get on the floor, before you even go in, you have to watch training videos. There needs to be money put into some type of webinar where even if people have to act, they need to have some type of webinar where people can understand how to give what they need. Salary and benefits. ITN number needs to be a part of the identification form. That's not optional. Include all of the programs for compensation, not just teachers, but administrators, custodians, sub teachers, family engagement specialists. Everybody in the program needs to be included. Program responsibility and performance should be in the hands of administrators. Educators have to get paid while getting educated. This brings me to a family care, child care administrators' perspectives. Administrators feel like now they have to go back to being teachers, and they feel like it's disrespectful because many administrators advocated for the new salary scale compensation package, and it's not being disputed equitably. This is why many educators, as you can see, are not lining up to testify because the many administrators advocated for this for their livelihood, and now they are being told that to wait until after the teachers. Lastly, I spoke with a teacher who was a part of the Spaces in Action Early Learning Committee. She's a DC native like me, and we grew up together around the same time. She's a licensed early learning educator, and she has a possible dreams of being a director. Some lingering questions about creating the system that adheres to DC cost living adjustment are questions that she has. The question is like, what do you want to be an administrator or a director for when there's no pay? You have no choice but to stay a teacher. Leaders of the Spaces in Action Early Learning Committee will be here today if they could, but I'm honored to share their words, thoughts, and sentiments. I would like to conclude with my own personal assertion. Do not separate salary and benefits. Include the ITIN number and identification forms. Everyone does not have a social security number. Pay and include benefits for everyone in the program, from center directors, sub-teachers, family engagement specialists, and consider experience-based of educators not from the United States, consider their experience from the countries they're from when you talk about experience versus credentialing. So that needs to be put into factor. Hire more people in Aussie in the language support department. Use the under 3DC workforce principles to affirm the compensation scale one more time before it goes into effect and the task force is disbanded. Thank you for allowing me to share our testimonies, and I'm open to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Sharp. So I'm going to call Katrina McCrae next, and then Angelique Spate-Marshall, who is in the attendee room. We're having trouble moving you over, Angelique, so you will be after Katrina, and we'll just allow you to talk from that room because we for some reason it's not working to move you over. So I just wanted to give you a heads up for that. So Katrina McCrae.
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for having me. Compensation team, Roundtable Talk. I'm going to speak on behalf of my fellow colleagues as well as myself. I have been teaching for 21 years in early childhood. Excuse me. I'm not a resident of DC. I teach in DC, however. Speaking with my fellow colleagues, the problem is a lot of them have the years of experience and have the education, but they're not being compensated to where that they equal out the same. Being that we have four different programs run in our center, the salaries and the pay scale is not the same. However, they're doing the same work and everybody has to be on this wall frame of that we're all giving every child the same learning experience. But it's kind of hard to do that when you have different salaries and different pay scales and different programs that are funding each program. So some of the teachers, they have the education or they have the experience, but they only have a CDA, but they have been in the field for over 20 plus years. And they're saying, I've been doing this for X amount of years, but my pay is still not going up. I've been working here for 25, 30 years, and I haven't had a raise in 3 years. So right now, everybody is getting the same pay, the 15 or whatever that you have for early childhood teachers and stuff. And they're saying, but I've been here longer. And they're having to juggle, as my fellow colleagues have spoke, they're having to juggle finding another job or leaving the field totally because there's not enough money to, for them to survive on a month-to-month basis, or not even a month-to-month basis, half of the month, because that's all their paycheck is allowing them to do. And then they have to find other revenues to compensate their bills for the rest of the month. And my job, they offer, I do get benefits, but then my other colleagues, they prefer to get the free medical thing because they can't afford to pay for it. However, I'm not a DC resident, so I have to pay. So there's another $300 to $400 out my pay that I have to go for medical. And speaking to the representative, they said not enough people are signing up for it. So that's why it's higher. So I have to get it, but at the same time, I'm losing money. So, and also the mileage and everything, the transfer and back and forth, I can't afford to live in DC. So I live somewhere else. So I drive an hour to an hour and a half, depending on traffic, to get to work, commute to work daily, there and back. And then when I get home, I'm still doing work to make sure I meet deadlines and all this stuff like this. And like my other colleague said, I done poured into children, into families, into my job. And when I get home, I can't even pour into my family because I'm tired. But I have to get up the next morning and do it again and give the kids and the families the best of my ability. And sometimes I'm exerted, but you would never know it because I have to put on this show and this front that I'm okay. Now, speaking of depression, I can't take a mental day at times because of staff shortage. You don't have enough staff to cover. And if you call out or this, that, and the third, you're putting your class at jeopardy because the kids are not getting the service that they need for that day. So you're pulling yourself in, mentally drained, and still trying to do what you need to do. So the compensation around the table, I feel like The compensation needs to go up. The medical pack benefits and all that stuff, we need to come up with some better resolution so that we all are giving ourselves, the families and the kids what we need and what they need in order to, I know I'm over my time, but this is the last thing I have to say. Doctors, police, presidents, what did they start out with? They started out with an early childhood. So if it wasn't for us putting that information into them, allowing them to go in these interest areas and to build on their social skills and all this stuff like that, then where would they be? When they speak and everything, they speak about their early years. The middle, the elementary and the middle and the high school sometimes is vague, but they go back to early learning. Sorry.
Thank you, Katrina. And Angelique, we are gonna, okay, I think you can now unmute yourself, Angelique, and speak, and we'll be able to hear you, even if I'm not sure if we'll be able to see you, but.
That's fine. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for allowing me to speak today. I am definitely talking about compensation, as I was a federal government employee for over 18 years, and we had GS scales from 1 all the way up to 15. I'm thinking that even though we're creating this new model for pay equity for educators, that we should probably use the same type of business model and just change the spokes, you know, so we can say educators or teachers or however you do it. But I had a parent call me today as I'm an entrepreneur, and she said the only thing she could pay was $150 a week, which is $30 a day, which is less than $3.33 for my staff. And I unfortunately couldn't take her because I said, well, how do you expect a person to live on that? And I am so sorry, because she couldn't get a voucher because she made $52,000 a year. She has to pay rent. And I understand her plight, but we know that everybody is having financial difficulties and issues. And as myself, I'd like to be a problem solver. And I thank OSSI for the opportunity. I just met with congressional leaders and congressmen and senators over this week to discuss universal pre-K, to discuss policy making, legislation, and how we should do things. And they asked me a number of questions, which I was able to answer. And I asked them a number of questions. And I also had an idea. I told them that I'm not just an educator who wants to come and complain. I'm a problem solver. As we have a number of educators in the field who want to receive medical benefits, and we have teachers in private institutions, why couldn't we lump all of them together with the medical field, and it'll definitely decrease the cost across the board. We're all teachers in DC public schools, childcare centers, home childcare settings, and private schools, and everybody need medical assistance. Even the District of Columbia have their own Medicare system. If you loop everybody together and find funding that they can put in, not even equally, but across the board, you can definitely get everybody to have medical benefits. They said that they was something that they would look into. But as the cost of living goes in the District of Columbia, like most people can't live here, how do you expect a provider to sustain a business, live in the District of Columbia with the cost continuing to go up, with persons, I mean, like you said, the institution that we created now is that you can go work at McDonald's or Amazon and get paid more to be a teacher. And that is totally sad. But I think that I told Congress, don't look at us like we're teachers. We never sit on babies. Look at us as business owners and entrepreneurs and educators. Because one thing I can say about everybody on the call, just like the last caller, you was once a baby. You didn't plateau to this situation without having to crawl on the backs of somebody who gave you that motivation, that plan, that ability to say, I'm going to do this job, and you're making a lot more money than the average person would be making. I am so flabbergasted at the fact that they can look at us and not look at us as a business. When you drive a car, you have to get car insurance. When you have a baby, you have to make sure they have life insurance. So why, as an educator or a parent, you got to definitely pay into childcare, because guess what? We ignite the economy. And what I mean by that is you're able to go to work because we can take care of your children, and your children are safe. They're in an environment that you trust. So we have to make sure that we have compatible pay equity for providers and anyone in the field. It's only fair. We're a business, an institution who caring for the next generation. If we don't, what's going to happen to you guys on the floor when they're making decisions for us? So if they start looking at us, I guess we have to talk like a business to look like a business, but because we have a love for children, you want to disencompensate us and say we're not worthy of what you can afford to pay us. I think we're just looking at it differently. But that's my time, and I pray that the pay equity go across. If you have to do some more research, look at what the government does and other agencies, because we've been GS 1s all the way up to 13s. Like you said, the time and service and the education draws. But what does quality care look like? Is it just your education? That's my 2 cents. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Sorry, I can't see your face. It's good to hear your voice though, Angelique. So I believe that is everyone, that everyone has had a chance to testify. I'm just double checking here to make sure. And it looks like a couple of folks have had to drop off, but we'll again do question rounds, and task force members should feel free to note some of the things that folks who had to drop off shared as well. We can circle back with them. Okay, so first of all, again, a big thank you to all of you for testifying, and particularly our frontline educators who are in classrooms every day working with our youngest children. I can't emphasize enough not only how much we value you and your work, but how much we appreciate you taking additional time to come and share your experiences and perspectives and insights with us. I had just a couple of questions. I had Ms. Nelson talked a little bit about some equity issues that I'd like to follow up with her on. Can do that offline, although if other people have thoughts about that, I'd love to hear that in a moment. I wanted to get at this question. We've been talking a little bit about the possibility of a short-term and a long-term option, given what might take time to put in place. So I heard both Mr. Echevarria and Ms. Brown talk about how ideally this would be within your program's funding and you would deliver compensation to your employees through their regular paychecks. So one, I want to make sure I'm hearing that correctly. I'm curious as to what your thoughts are, and you did mention this, Ms. Brown, but with the possibility of, as a short-term option, doing a more a stipend system that would go direct to educators in order to give time to build the systems to make sure that the funding formulas were such that we could meet those salary scales, and that the programs had the capacity to do what they needed to do to ensure that's baked into people's salaries. So would love your thoughts on that.
So first and foremost for me is the importance of getting the money to our educators and getting it to them in the quickest way possible. But again, as I said earlier, I am concerned about it being distributed outside of the employer, because if people don't get it, it becomes an administrative task for us anyway. So it would be my preference that you determine what that allocation is and allow us to distribute it and hold us accountable to ensure that that happens.
Thank you.
I agree. I think that distributing it through us and the employer will allow for the easiest way to make sure that there's continued communication between the employee, us, and the government, to make sure that there's a straight line of communication that doesn't cause any glitches that could then affect the operations and even the relationship between the educators and their employers.
Thanks. And I would welcome thoughts on that from Ms. McCrae. Ms. Burt, I think maybe just dropped off as well, but from our classroom educators as well, about your perspective on that, whether payments that are going direct to educator in sort of a stipend form, again, as a possible short-term option versus being baked into salaries at, through your employer.
I have experienced both, where I've received stipends directly, and also receive stipends through my employer. Either way, it's based on if you doing the job and meet the requirements. And the bottom line, the employer has to agree to saying that you meet you achieved X, Y, and Z in order to get the stipend each time. So if it's any any discrepancies or anything where you didn't receive it and you have a paper trail explaining why you didn't receive it, to back up, oh, you didn't receive it because this wasn't completed or your job performance or X, Y, and Z. So I get it, and I get it on the employer side. It's easy to handle or whatever, so that when we do come to you and we want to know where our money is, we don't want to hear, well, I have to contact X, Y, and Z to see where your money is. So I get it on both ends. And for the one speaking far as I don't want the employer to handle my money because I did what I needed to do, it's kind of 50-50 because, it's a catch-22. Either way, I just agree that, you have to do what you have to do in order to receive it. And if the paper trail is keep continuing to go in so that where you can see they did receive it, they did do X, Y, and Z, it is easier. And like Mr. Paul and Ms. Brown actually said, it's easy to maintain, so it's, it's either way. Sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that is my time. So Walrick, I know you are in transit, so I don't want you to do anything unsafe, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to ask questions if you would like to.
Sure. So I don't actually have questions for this panel, but I did want to express my thanks for the testimony and the honesty from the group here in this panel. So thank you. I'll yield my time.
All right. Sally.
Good afternoon. First, again, I just want to echo my thanks to everybody coming to testify, sharing your stories. I know it's not easy, and I know it's not easy staying within your time frame. That clock runs down pretty quickly. I wanted to get back to the point about bonuses or stipends as a short-term fix, and I'm going to pick on Ms. Brown just because it was part of her testimony. And I'd be interested to know if we're looking at a bonus or a stipend as part of this overall compensation scale, should we look at the bonuses in a tiered manner also? Meaning, should a bonus or a stipend be tied into someone's credentials and role in a program, or should it be a flat rate? And if we have time after Ms. Brown's response, I'd love to hear anybody else weigh in.
That's a difficult question.
That's why I asked it.
When you look at the salary scale, it should be credentialed. But if I were to speak on stipends and bonuses initially that would be distributed quickly, I look at the work that all of our educators, regardless of credentials and what they have done, especially in the face of the pandemic. I don't think there's a difference if you're a teacher or you're a teacher assistant, if you have a bachelor's degree or you have a CDA, because they have all faced the same challenges. They have all rode on the same roller coaster of there's infection today, I got to scramble, everything is great tomorrow. I don't think there's a difference in the risk that they have faced during this time. So from bonuses and stipends, I think it should be uniform across the board. But when you get to scales, a set compensation, it should be based on credentials.
Thank you. I'd love to hear anybody else weigh in on that.
I agree with Patricia that our team members have gone way beyond the call of duty, and I believe that they should be recognized for what they have had to do during the pandemic. But I also agree with Patricia that we need to make sure that the compensation scales reflect the level of education and the experience that the team members have in order for there to be a sound basis for the salaries that they're making, and a recognition, once again, because this is all linked to dignity, is all linked to what the employees, who they are, and the blood, sweat, and tears that they have poured into becoming professionals. There needs to be a recognition of that experience, that hard work, that education that they have done, so that they truly feel that the compensation is fair.
Thank you.
I agree about the bonuses being the same across the board, but I do feel the salaries should be on a tier level. I do not feel like a TA should be making the same across the board. It all depends on if a TA has an associate's degree, there's no way that they should be still making the same as a person who has a CDA. That's not fair. They went to school and got the training and the knowledge or whatever, and they have a degree. Granted, a CDA is valid, but they have a degree. When you look at it on the pay scale and everything, when you have a degree and the knowledge, I feel like you should be compensated a little bit better.
Thank you.
And if I can just jump in, one other critical piece that we've not talked about in this conversation, I think Raul touched on it a little bit, this whole notion of compensation and the cost of doing business also creates morale issues in centers, because the employees think that it's us and them, and we don't care about them and we don't value them. But the reality is we're trying to also sustain the business. And so it's critical that we receive the support so that we can ensure that we can be one team and one happy, aligned team, and that our employees know that we do value them and we do see them as important. And it's not that we're devaluing them and not giving them what they're entitled to in terms of respect. And respect and dignity is all about the ability to live comfortably and to have not a living wage, but a livable wage. And in DC, livable is significant. So I'll just throw that in.
Thanks. I appreciate all the answering the hard questions.
Christina.
Well, again, thank you very much for your testimony. I just want to follow up on a question of a comment, and this will be for Raul and Patricia, because I am familiar also with the pre-keep, and I noticed that you both mentioned the pre-keep and the enterprise management system that is used to manage the funds for pre-keep. It's something that you see as a way of, in the long term, distribute the funds to the schools, if that's what we decided to do. I want you to expand a little bit more, because in my experience, I also manage a pre-keep program. In my only concern with that it's a reimbursed-based program. Everything else, I think it could work, but for the smaller businesses, pay all the money that they need to come up front to then be reimbursed could be very programmatic for a lot of the smallest business. So I want you to just expand on that a little bit more. Thank you.
Raul, you want to take that one first?
Well, sure. I mean, I do believe that the reimbursement situation can be challenging for some providers. I do believe that there's mechanisms that perhaps could be put in place where there are some front loading some grants in order to be able to kind of jumpstart the process, so that then we can, and then afterwards, once the cash flows are established, you can start be able to. What I'm looking at in my experience, the pre-keep program has allowed us to be able to do better work, have better staff, and that has led to improvement in the bottom line that then I can use to be able to support the continued growth of the enterprise and to continue to support those salaries. So that's kind of like what I'm envisioning. If there were to be some sort of grant money that could be used to front and jumpstart the initiative, then have it carry over and be able then allow the provider to be able to kind of reap the benefits of that jumpstart, and then everything falls under everything would be easier than under a reimbursement program afterwards. That's how that's kind of like what I'm envisioning. I don't know if Patricia has a different.
And I would agree with the grant idea. I think that's a way to put the funding out. And the key is, again, holding the provider, the center administration accountable to ensure that the funds that have been distributed have been used appropriately. But I think that's a great way to do it.
And also I think that, just so for the requirements of pre-K that you have to be accredited and then you have to receive subsidy, I think that it's more like the enterprise management system look into a very different way, because the pre-K has, many other requirements that, it will not put, it would not allow us to do this in an equitable way, as I see it right now. But I guess probably what you're all saying is the enterprise management system in running a different way could work in the long run, right?
Yeah, I think it's about the system, not about the requirements. So the requirements may look differently, but the system, I think, is beneficial and it's already built.
Thank you very much.
I think that if I may jump in, it's about the technical know-how that is already there within within OSSI and even within some of us as PK providers, that then we can leverage to have a system, to use this system as the linchpin, so to speak, in terms of, and for how do we hold oversight and disperse the funds through the program. It's not necessarily taking all of the
right.
key requirements and moving them forward, but using the basis of the system as kind of like the platform.
Exactly, the framework.
Thank you very much. I just almost all my time.
Thank you. Rakaya.
Thanks everyone for your testimony, and especially I want to thank Mr. Tisdale and Ms. McCrae, who I think has just rolled off, for your testimony. It's always so inspiring to hear about how passionate you are for your work and how hard you work to make sure that our kids are able to get the support they need. I want to ask you all a question about oversight. So I'm wondering, what, as a teacher, how do you think other educators across the district would be able or would want to be involved in oversight? So what is the way that you want to be involved in making sure that this program is working well and doing what it's supposed to do and getting you what you need? Would you, maybe the question is, would you like to be part of that, and do you think your colleagues would? And then if so, kind of what should we know about making sure it's possible for you to be involved? And then once Mr. Tisdale is able to answer that question, I would love to open it up to program administrators to answer the same question, depending on how much time we have left.
I honestly, so you said how do you think we like to be involved? That's what you were alluding to. You said like how, like do we want to be involved? Of course. We just want to be in the conversation and just being in the know of what's going on around, and knowing the steps that we have to take to make that financial leap. So not just it being given to us, like what are the things that we need to do on our end to earn the salary that we're asking for, in the conversation that we're asking for, just more awareness and being in the know. Having a representative that represents the our tier, the teacher tier, that's a voice for the teachers.
Thank you. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of information, making sure that all the information is transparent. I want to open it up to program administrators and directors as well. What, I guess number one, how important is it to you that program administrators and directors are involved in an oversight and accountability process as this program is being implemented? And what do you think we need to know about making sure that teachers can be involved and that program directors and administrators can be involved in that oversight? Oh, and Ms. McCray, you are here. Sorry, I want to make sure you're able to answer as well.
As Mr. Tisdale expressed, we would like to be a part of the oversight committee to be in the know and to, see how you come up with these things and how would we benefit and how would they benefit. And it's just so that it's around the table across the board that everybody has that communication and know the language. A lot of times the teachers, we're in the classrooms and we have other people speaking for us on our behalf, unbeknownst to us, but speaking about what we should get paid and what all this or whatever, and they don't know our financial situation. So if you put us in the know and everything so that we're in the lieu of things, I feel like we would want to. All the teachers, I feel my colleagues would want to be in the know and be part of the oversight.
Thank you. Others?
I'll just say from my vantage point, I totally agree, because I believe that the people that actually do the work should always have a voice. And so I think that actually benefits the administrators as well, because they hear it directly, they're getting the information directly, they're having an opportunity to participate. And again, we're all aligned for the good of the program. So I think that's a critical component.
I think that that administrators need to be involved. I mean, because it's all part of open and honest communication from the government through to the grassroots level. And I think that we are right there in the middle, and we need to be involved. But I do believe that we can be involved in a way that promotes the transparency. And I think that where we can get help is having the clear guidance from OSSI or from the council, being able to look at I think that having the scales, whenever that happens, finally getting those scales and getting clarity on those scales is going to do wonders, because then everybody's going to be operating on the same information, and then everything is and then if we have that same information, then we can start speaking hopefully the same language and clear up any potential areas of misunderstandings, and frankly, once there is that clarity, oversight becomes a lot more easy, because you know what you're looking for, and then everybody in the grassroots knows what exactly where they should be. Everybody all the providers know exactly what it is that they're supposed to be doing, and then the administrators at the state level can look and see whether it matches or not, and not rely just on one part of any one part of the equation, because again, everybody should be seeing that clarity across the board and should be receiving those benefits in a way that is very, again, clear and transparent. So it takes a village, and I think that the village is all the way from OSSI running through to the grassroots level.
Thank you.
Thanks. Sarah.
Thanks. I have a question for Ms. Spite Marshall, but would be happy to hear if the other program leaders on the phone have thoughts on this as well. Angelique, I appreciate you talked about your experience in the federal government and the salary schedules there, which I think have some similarities with the proposed compensation scale OSSI put forward. I'm curious, as an employer yourself, if this task force were to establish a compensation scale that looks like this, and you were then to receive money and be accountable for paying your staff according to that centralized salary scale. How feasible does that feel for you currently? What might be challenging, or what support or assistance might you need in order to actually put that in practice in your program?
Currently just hiring a payroll system, because just like everything, I want transparency. So any money I receive, I have a company that I've been working with, and we work together, and they would disperse everything just in case audits come up or anything come up. I have a whole system that would definitely do that. But doing the numbers and working on my employees, I just sent the text out them today about the young lady continuing to call. But I think so I communicate with them because I want them to feel comfortable. And I have to find a better way to maintain my employees for them to go out and get something else. So I include them into everything. Things they don't know about, they're able to ask questions. But sometimes it's an unbalance. That's why they got the EDIL loan and the PPP we have to apply to sustain our business. So thinking outside the box. But I have a company that would come in, and sometimes it's hard, but if we made enough to be able to pay them, I think that we wouldn't have to do as much to do it. And I apologize because, like you said, I'm not on screen and I'm doing like 4 things at one time. But I appreciate the team. I appreciate you guys working together and even thinking about this. And Congress understands and knows when you talk about the workforce, don't forget about entrepreneurs, home daycare providers, and daycare centers, and just talk about FAPE, because school is free. Because these kids that are going to do universal pre-K, you have to remember one thing: the teachers that are already in the classroom are not ready to change diapers, even though they're going to have to start. So you're going to have a flux in a situation, and you're also going to have an educational desert, because the 3-year-olds who are able to get in school and the parents who are tech savvy and get them in there fast, what about the people who not? You're going to have a whole bunch of students to still be at home that have to utilize home daycare providers and daycare centers. So I told them to look at a mixed universal program to be able to support everyone, because if you don't, and you only think about universal pre-K and the kids going to school, it's going to be a disservice.
Thanks. If I have a little time, I'd love to ask Mr. Echevarria another question, which is, you spoke, I think, with pride in your comments about Communicates paying, in your understanding, a higher salary to your staff than many other programs in the district. If we were to implement a universal compensation scale that needed to be common across all child development facilities in the district, how would that affect your business, given that you currently believe that you pay higher than other programs?
I think it would be great, because part of the strangeness of the right now in terms of how the PK program affects my business is that because we work also with toddlers and infants, we all of a sudden have a 2-tier system in which some teachers are paid at a level which is commensurate to DCPS, and then the others are still at the level of in the market level, whatever, that's what we call it. So you have these discrepancies, and frankly, it is a challenge to handle that the morale issues that can come from that. So I think that having that gap become equalized, and even across the board, would allow us then to focus less energy on having to deal with that kind of schizophrenia, if you will, between in terms of who is a PK teacher, who is not. Summer programs, how do you pay for the summer versus the regular school year, which take a lot of energy, and kind of also make some of the teachers, even though they're being paid, feel disrespected because they don't really understand how this works, and why are you paying me this much during the school year, but then this much during the summer. So I just think that, again, clarity, transparency, and a logical way of understanding why different team members are paid the way they're paid would would actually make my operation run smoother. And frankly, we spend tons of time and tons of money in trying to manage that, trying to manage how to let the employees know that we're being fair with all of these different bells and whistles moving around with summer camp versus regular year, peaky versus non-peaky. It would just make things a lot easier, I think, and focus on the educational aspect, and let us focus on the quality of the teaching, which then which is where our eyes should be.
Thank you. Marla.
I'm sorry, Miss Abigail, if I may, I'm a pre-K teacher. So what Mr. Raul just said, I work with my colleagues. So when they know it's a requirement for us to be a pre-K teacher. However, some of them do not meet the qualifications, and they do understand that it's a pay change and everything. So when he's talking about the morale is technically not coming for us from that aspect. The morale is coming from the fact that they've been there for X amount of years and there was no pay raises. Not the morale far as that the pre-K is getting this pay versus a non-pre-K classroom. That's not where the disconnect is. Because when you're in a pre-K classroom, you're required to do more work because you're having to answer to your employee, but also OSSI. So it's two different things that you're having to require that you have to do. And a lot of them don't want to do that extra back end of the work. So they do understand that it's a pay difference in the two different jobs versus being a pre-K teacher or pre-K assistant versus being just a ELC, or early learning, or just, a regular childcare teacher and a childcare assistant. So I just wanted to add that in. Thank you,
Katrina. And Raleigh, if you could reset Marla's 5 minutes so she gets, I don't want to shortchange you, Marla. So let's go ahead and turn it to you.
Thank you. So first, I want to say thank you to everyone who's participated in this conversation thus far, and to just say that this is, again, complex work, as I have stated before. I want to remind us all that we are trying to engage in transformational work in a very short space in time. I mean, I think that the pluses around that we're going to potentially equalize pay between pre-K and infant and toddler teachers is transformational. Seek pay parity and equity between early childhood educators and their K-12 peers. All of this is transformational work, and there's not a lot of precedent for us to use as we go through this. I raise all of that because I want to echo on what Pat said around, in every room that I've ever been in with early childhood directors and administrators, they've always led with their teachers' best interests at heart. I've never heard any comments to the contrary, but this is a complex system that by design makes people think, I think fosters distrust and thinks that people are involved in lack of transparency because there are so many different funding mechanisms, way people get funded, and people are not sure if they're truly being receiving the salary and compensation and benefits that they are entitled to. So with that being said, I'll come back to my question that I asked in the earlier panel. With all of these considerations in January 15th, what do you think are the things that we need to keep in mind so that we do not do any harm and that we set up the circumstances that makes this a more integrated, more coherent system so that everyone feels valued and understood in this process?
I think the consistency in a pay scale based on credentials with clear steps for increases will go a very, very long way. Right now, the lack of inconsistency across the industry is challenging, and some centers may be able to afford to do more than others because they don't carry the same expense loads and that kind of thing. And it does create distrust, and the morale has an impact on the ability for the program to be what it could be. So I think the pay scales and the consistency is a first step, a critical step. So if you only had to do that between now and January, and I'm not sure how you're going to do that, I think that is the most critical thing in my mind, but also disseminating funds quickly, because I've shared in my situation, I feel like I need to do something now because I'm losing the best and brightest, and I'm challenged to get the best and brightest because DCPS and other jurisdictions are offering more, but our teachers are doing DC Teach, they're getting their credentials, and then they're coming to me and they're saying, okay, now what? And it's a challenge for us to react because we don't have the funds to do that. So the pay scale for me is critical.
So Abigail, if you would allow me, I want to be clear, Pat Raul, all center directors, are you also, because we've been having a very deep discussion between a minimum salary and a salary scale. So I really want to know, what I heard from you, Pat, was you really want the salary scale.
I really want a salary scale.
You do? Okay.
I do. Because I think that brings equity across the industry. When you do a minimum, then you almost land back where we are now.
Okay. That's very helpful and concrete. Can I get the answer to that question from other operators, please?
I agree that the scale is crucial, and the scale does two things. It doesn't set a floor that then eventually could also become a ceiling. It builds in a scale, builds in growth, and bakes in a growth mindset and a self-improvement mindset, and a pride and dignity that comes from sticking it out and being someone who is in it for the long haul through recognition and financial compensation for experience. So I think that having that scale and it being as clearly defined as possible would be the most important thing. The second most important thing would be to get the monies out as soon as possible. And I don't know that if this is necessarily compatible, but that is why I encourage all of you to look at the systems that are already existing and the technical know-how that we have, and leveraging that so that we can meet this challenge of reconciling those two very important and perhaps not completely compatible needs.
I'm probably over time. Can I hear from Ms. Spike, please, please, please? Is she still here?
She is.
Okay.
Do you have a perspective on that, Angelique? And if I know Angelique, she's got like a baby in one arm and she's, you know. Are you still with us? Well, we know where to find her, so we will follow up.
Thank
you. So again, I know that we keep repeating our thanks, but it is because it is so significant, the time and energy and brain power that you all are sharing with us this morning or this afternoon now. Again, for anyone who did not submit written testimony, would love to have it and have the opportunity to follow up with any further questions. I will just say a couple things in closing. One is that people have mentioned again and again how complicated what we're trying to do is. And so one, I just want to appreciate that, because I think as task force members, we are aware and increasingly aware of that, but we appreciate that recognition from the broader stakeholder group that this is complicated stuff and that we want to do it right. We don't want to do something that then turns out is going to put us, is going to create new obstacles or set us backwards in some way. And knowing that some of that takes some time. So I really appreciate some of the suggestions people have had about how to prioritize, how we might phase things, and the importance of continuing this work, whether it's in the form of this task force or some other form, that it's going to need to go on beyond January 15th. That seems pretty clear to me based on all that we've heard. So I think that's a charge for us as a task force to think about in our recommendations. What happens beyond the formal existence of this task force, given the charge that we've had? And I also want to note, we've talked about the focus on equity in what the charge of this compensation program is, including between infant, toddler, and pre-K, across that, and across early care and DCP or K-12. But the other thing that I think is important, and having Angelique here, underscores that, is also equity across settings. So whether you're in a center-based, a school-based, or a family childcare-based environment, that all of those are educators who are doing this work, and all need to be recognized for that as they continue to to invest their own time, energy, and gain more credentials, and et cetera. So I just wanted to name that as well. So with that, I am going to conclude this roundtable. It is 12:59 p.m. I want to thank all of the task force members for all of your time and attention, and everyone who testified. And we have work to do before. We have work to do beyond that. And I think I'm looking at my text here, because Christina Setlow is keeping me honest about making this all official, but I think that's what I was supposed to say. So thank you, and I will see task force members very soon at our next meeting.
Thank you.